Well, it's not. The worst thing about it is the reopening is causing a problem, and even though obviously I still believe, obviously we all should have protested, but it's going to cause another wave, and we're all going to get completely.
Well, I mean, if you're looking at like numbers as of this week, a lot of places have already spiked due to Memorial Day. Like Florida, for example, had the biggest growth in a single week of anywhere on the planet already so far.
Yep.
With almost 9,000 new cases this week alone. And that's all from Memorial Day.
Yeah.
One thing you have to remember, too, is when cases can be found out from COVID, it is like at least a week after. Right?
Yeah.
So when cases spike, it has to be correlated to the week like before the cases spike.
Well, yeah, that's why I was saying all the stuff coming out now is definitely from like
Memorial protest. It's not the protest.
It's not yet.
So of course, yeah, it's going to happen.
It's going to spike even more. Yeah, it's going to spike even more.
But people are going to blame stuff that's happening right this moment on the protests.
Right.
Right. And it's like, I don't know, it's just fucking dumb.
Also, how about the media, like, pretty much not showing that anymore? Like, mainstream media has stopped showing protest. Protesting has not stopped.
Do you know why?
60,000 man protest in Minneapolis, like, yesterday or the day before.
And the reason why is because they're peaceful now.
Yeah, because the cops got fucking exposed, and now they're not trying to beat the shit out of people.
And they're now, I mean, because like everyone's always been like, oh, look at this, these guys are rioters, looters, blah, blah, blah. That's why the police, they're the ones instigating everything so that they can get everybody mad, so that they have an excuse to send out the military and paint the movement as a bad thing. But, ugh, God, drives me nuts, dude.
The thing is it's still happening. It hasn't even stopped. Like the threads of people like showing like police brutality, even to this day, are still getting new videos.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I mean, when the president is saying things like watching them split the crowds and seeing the tear gas go up is a beautiful sight.
Wait,
like,
people said
what
that?
The fuck? He said that. Yeah, it said at a presser.
Oh,
he said his words were, "It shouldn't be, but to me, it's a beautiful thing to see."
Oh my God.
So he literally said, "To me, I love seeing this shit. I love seeing people get tear gassed and shot with rubber bullets." Like, he wants to see that shit, and he called the Secret Service the SS.
Right.
Yep.
And then he also said what the old man was scanning, the police stuff to
Oh, dude,
he was a terrorist like person and shit like that, and it's like if you look at the old man's history of anything, he was a very peaceful protester who fought for the rights of other people.
Yep, and he works for nonprofits.
I feel like that tweet right there. I mean, bottom of the barrel, I mean, for him is getting pretty low, and I thought that one was pretty freaking low, dude. Ugh.
Trump is either one of two things in my mind. He either thinks he already won, and he can say whatever he wants at this point, or he's getting so desperate that he's trying to rile up his base.
Well,
and
I mean,
start even more like terrorism.
Well,
I think it's both, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's already proven that it doesn't matter. He can say any damn thing he wants. It's not going to change his voter base. It's just not. Like, there's nothing he can do at this point in time that will change any person who's going to vote for him. They
won't even change their minds even when it's not about him.
Right.
Like, they'll see evidence of police brutality or this or that, and they won't change their mind on it. Like, there's been like some of the police, like, a lot of their like arguments are like, oh, don't do bad shit if you don't want to get like beaten up by the police at a protest, right? Right. So like, okay, so let's pretend like all these guys are doing bad shit at protests, right? So that doesn't explain the people who were walking home from the grocery store.
Yeah.
With getting their eyes literally shot out by random police people just doing.
Or the barbecue restaurant owner that was cooking outside and got shot by the National Guard just while he was cooking. Dead. Like, fucking, yeah, dude, it sucks.
They won't change their mind regardless of what evidence is in their face.
And that's the weird
will not.
Breonna Taylor, sleeping in her bed.
She was asleep. She was literally asleep.
Shot down into a pool of blood.
I mean, that's the thing, right? I mean, that's the hard part is they couldn't quell the protests by trying to paint them as bad guys. And now that the protests are still going and they're peaceful, which kills their narrative, the choice is not to show it at all and make everyone think that everybody stopped, right? But that's not the situation here. And that's always one of the tough things for me too, right? Because, you know, I want to go out there and protest and everything like that. But like for me, like, I don't know, like I'm so introverted and, you know, and all this other stuff. And like, I don't know. I wish I could get myself out there to do it, but
I don't think I could physically do it. I don't think I'd be able to get away from police if they started freaking the fuck out. And here in Portland, they're still freaking the fuck out. It hasn't changed. So,
right. Yeah, no, in Minneapolis, they're still pretty bad too. They did a drive-by macing on a bunch of people like 2 days ago.
Right.
Just because they felt like it.
Right.
Because I would have to show up to the protest with my cane. Like I wouldn't be able to be there for very long without it.
Yeah.
So. It's just like it's just not a good idea if I go.
It's just like ugh. But you know what? I mean, definitely good to the people who are out there continuing, you know, to protest.
Oh, absolutely. And I felt pretty guilty until Katana Prime had me on a stream to commentate.
Oh, that's cool.
This KI event, and then we raised like over $2,000 within 2 hours to donate to the BLM
That's awesome.
movement.
Good shit.
Yeah, it was cool.
One of the things that I first mentioned, because the reason I mentioned this was because I got a lot of messages of people that had the same problem as you, Brett, and they were like, "I'm not doing enough, you know, I can't go out and protest or whatever." A lot of people don't realize that, like, okay, so you go out and protest and you live with people, right? You give them COVID, and maybe you don't get COVID because you can carry it, but you don't get fucked up by it.
Right. Yeah.
You don't want to do that, or you got to pay the bills, right? Like these are all things that you have to remember. It's okay if you can't get rid of your livelihood just to help out.
I mean,
yeah, I was actually saying that to James the other day. Like, not everybody can protest, but there's something that you can probably do. So try to find the way to do that.
I mean, that's why I'm using my voice. That's why I am talking about it. One of the things, because like one of the problems is that I did go get tested because they, you know, California is doing the free tests. So I got tested. I was cleared with a clean, you know.
Did
clean
you get the swab all the way through?
Yeah. I swabbed the mouth and everything like that and everything. And so I can go visit my parents now. You know, I can go and see my parents. And so, like, I can't with good conscience try to go out and protest and potentially catch it before I see them, you know, kind of situation. Fair. So, yeah. Davey
G's been out there quite a bit.
Oh yeah, he's out there all the time. So
all the time, I've noticed that. Yeah.
No, I mean, look,
it's going hard.
There's people in the chat talking about how it's overhyped media. It's not. It's not. Like, people are dying constantly out there. It's been happening for years. The systemic racism is built into our society, completely built into it. And if you don't acknowledge it, and if you don't believe that it's happening, you're just blind to the fact that it's there, right? Like, I tell the story, like I told the story on my stream that when I got pulled over by a police when I was a teenager, like 10 years ago, the only people that I was worried about being killed by were my parents, you know? And like, I don't have to think about that shit, right? You just don't have to think about that.
You didn't have to have the talk.
Right. And like, you sit there and watch that video of the kid, you know, crying because, you know, his dad has to tell him that you could die because you're black. And then police just fucking target you for no goddamn reason, you know? So.
All right, so Alicia is I'm assuming trolling right now. But yes, George Floyd did have a criminal background. A, do you think the police knew that? They didn't. I guarantee you.
Right.
B, just because you have a criminal background doesn't mean you deserve to die on the pavement in the middle of a street with a fucking cop's knee on your neck.
Because, okay,
come on,
here's
man.
the best. Look, here's the best way to put it. Okay, this is exactly how you state it. Okay, if George Floyd was white and had all of the same criminal activities, he would be alive. 100%. That's just how you put it. It doesn't.
He would have been dragged out of his car.
Right. He probably would have been able just to drive away and be okay. And he would have had that criminal background and nothing would have actually happened. That's exactly how it works. So
if you actually believe he died from fentanyl in his system and not his carotid artery being blocked for eight and a half minutes,
right?
You're in denial. You're in heavy denial.
Yeah, and it's just
100%.
And this is the worst part about it, right? All this stuff that the people who don't want to believe right? All the stuff that people don't, the people who don't want to believe that this is what's happening right now, they all hear the same thing, and they all, parrot the same crazy, like, tinfoil theory kind of stuff out there, when, like, the evidence is out there that, there was a study last year that it's a statistically, like, significant percentage of young black men being killed by police. Like, the study literally says it's a statistically, significant amount. So
black people are killed at 2.5 times the amount of white people.
Yep.
In America.
Yeah, and
in the ratio.
Right.
That is a 100% fact. Look that shit up. I'm not making that up. There's also many other facts I could drop right now, but just think about that for a second.
Yeah.
Police are killing black people at 2.5 times the rate of white people.
Yeah.
That's ridiculous.
And again, we had a whole situation where all these people with guns walked into a fucking, Capitol building, and nobody shot any tear gas at him. Nobody did anything. You know why? Because the cops were scared too. Like, they're not going to try to fight any of those guys because they're going to get killed. That's why they attacked the peaceful protesters, because they're not going to get hurt, And yeah, and that's the thing, right? I mean, people are going to try to downplay it as much as possible, and it's just like, you're going to try to downplay it as much as possible, and you can't even possibly imagine what it's like to live in as a black person in the country. Like, the shit that you have to go through, the shit that you have to realize. Like I said, I'm never going to if I ever have kids, I'm never going to have to tell them how to survive a police, pulling them over. That's just not something I ever have to think about, And
Alicia, yes, more white people are killed than black people by cops. That is 100% true. Do you understand that there's like 77% white people in America and 11% black people?
Yeah.
And that the ratio was correct, which I just explained to you. 2.5 times more black people are dying at the hands of cops than white people.
Right.
The ratio is 2.5 times out of disproportion.
Right.
Not that anyone should be dying by cops, period.
Right.
But the ratio is not... Just Google some shit, please. Like, I feel like I'm talking to a wall. All this information is out there for you. Please Google it. Check Twitter. There's so many resources. I'm really just trying to be patient and educate you rather than assume that you're malicious, because I don't want to do that. However, it really seems like you're being malicious when you say something stupid like only 9 black people were killed by cops in 2019, when the real stat was like 236 or something like that. So stop it.
Right. It's not the same situation. I mean, a black cosplayer with a sword on their back got killed, shot by cops, right? And then, some dude with a fucking, automatic rifle is sitting there in a McDonald's, a white guy, and he's going to be fine, but a guy picks up a toy BB gun in Walmart and he's shot. It's a completely different situation. It is a very different kind of thing. So again, it's and like I said, that's the hardest part about it, right? It's like everyone who tries to argue this keeps coming up with the same things that are parroted by Fox News, right? Like, Fox News says something, everybody tries to repeat it, and eventually everybody has this completely warped way to try to excuse it, and that's the problem. And yeah, the real problem is education and jobs, but that's why there's gerrymandering, and there's, making all these different borders so that the poor communities, which happen to be people of color, don't get any of the shit benefits that anyone else can get.
No, it doesn't happen to be people of color. It's people of color by fucking design.
Yes, exactly. But happen to be quote unquote, right?
Yeah,
so
that shit is by design.
Yeah, exactly. So again, it's all part of there was a great article that I read that Central Park was actually a very vibrant black neighborhood in New York. And when New York decided to build up a park, they did it by tearing down that city, by kicking everybody out of their homes, specifically to eliminate the they
gentrified an entire city.
Right, exactly, and they just destroyed it.
An entire town.
Yeah, exactly. So again, look, I don't want to derail this too much, and I know, it's kind of tough to do this. I'm going to time out Alicia for a second here just a little bit because this is just not going anywhere. And
man, we almost went a whole stream without any disruptions. We almost didn't talk politics. We were so close.
Right. But the thing about it is it's important to talk about it. And I mean, you can see how much it's affecting us right now. You can see how much, you know,
Isaiah hasn't said a word in like 20 minutes.
Yeah, and how frustrating it is.
Pissed.
Yeah, clearly, yeah.
Yeah, it's just like it's so hard to deal. Like you guys, like that's the thing. I said it on my stream. Privilege are the things that you do not have to think about, right? Anything that you never have to think about in your life, that you can sit there and say those things like, oh, well, it's because of this and it's because of this. That is where privilege comes from, because I never have to think about, like I said, I'll never have to think about if I meet the love of my life, I'll never have to think about, does my state allow me to get married, right? That's straight privilege right there, right? You know, the reason why so many wealthy people don't care about the healthcare system is because that's wealth privilege. It doesn't matter how they get sick. They're going to be able to take care of it. That's wealth privilege, right? The reason why Denzel Washington can stop the police on the street and not be shot is because he's Denzel Washington. That's celebrity privilege. The reason why...
That was fucking David Briggs. Right. Not Denzel Washington. He would have got fucking arrested too.
Yeah, there's a reason why I can drive around in a Lexus and not get pulled over like I stole the car, because that's Asian privilege right there. There's privilege all over the different places. I don't have to think about that shit. And as soon as you have to think about that, that is where you are being unfairly treated. And that is where the black community is right now. They are in a position where they are forced to always have to think about these things. It is a statistically unignorable level of, you know, of a problem. It's
systematic oppression and racism.
Yeah, exactly. You have to, like, trying to deny that, trying to find every excuse possible. And that's the thing, right? When you try to fight it, when you try your best to undermine it, like, you see the kind of hoops that you have to jump through to undermine this kind of thing? You know what I mean? Like, you have to go through...
The mental gymnastics are
right.
strong.
It's crazy, whereas if you just look at the patterns... and you look at the actual truth of the matter, you know, it's not hard to see that this is a real problem out there, you know, and it's orchestrated this way. It's absolutely orchestrated this way. Asians, I mean, me as an Asian American, we're used as a weapon against black people because we are the model minority. They pit us against each other, you know, specifically to create this divide. Like, hey, look, the Asians obey. They're great, you know, like, and everything. And that's fucking awful, which is why as an Asian man, I have to also, you know, really help out with the Black Lives Matter movement as well, because they've spent too much time orchestrating this, pitting us against each other, and that can't keep going, you know. Like, it's a tough situation, and, you know, it's, again, the amount of work that you have to go through to justify everything. You know, it all leads back to, you know, it's because of this. Well, you know why this is happening, right? Well, that's because of this. Well, you know why this is happening, right? Well, it's because of this. Well, you know why that's happening. And it's all part of the entire, you know, way that it's worked. And there was a great video out there that talked about it, that it all kind of came, and it's interesting too, because it's not just an American thing. It happens in Europe as well. You know, Europe obviously has a really...
The UK is pretty rough with it
too. UK is pretty bad about it. And so what was interesting about this video that I saw is that it came from the Roman Empire, that they had to justify looting all the other countries. And so what they did was they painted all the other countries and ethnicities as less than human. And because of that, that has pervaded through centuries now. And so that kind of mindset has continued forward, and that's what's still driving this kind of narrative. It's kind of crazy. So, you know, it's a frustrating situation. And I'm sorry, Isaiah, that, you know, that you had to, that this had to come up and, you know, get you kind of riled up like this and everything. But, you know, again, I don't blame you. And you have absolutely every right to be this mad. And that's why we have to continue to educate people about this entire thing, you know, because there's enough people out there that want to keep making these excuses.
Yep.
You know, and it's just not true. It's just not true. Like, it's night and day. It is absolutely night and day. And, you know, people will make every excuse in the world to explain it, whereas racism exists. You know, you literally can just say, look, our society is racist. Not even just that, like, you know, there are racists out there. One of the most, you know, vile forms of racism is the subconscious racism, right? Is the whole thing where you teach your kids, if you see a black person walking by your car, that you make sure you lock your doors and kind of shit like that, right?
Clutch your purse.
Right. And so, you know, my parents did that to me. My parents still say some stuff, and I yell at them all the time about this, right? And so here's the thing is, but the problem is that's not intentional racism. That's the subconscious racism that's been taught to us through society. And that is, like, that's where the harm is coming in, and that's what we have to fight, and that's what we are trying to fight. That's what Black Lives Matter is all about here. Is that there is all this systemic racism, there is all this subconscious racism, and there is all this shit that's been happening that has turned our country, in our society, into this. And that's what we're trying to fight right now. That's the whole idea of the Black Lives Matter movement. And, you know, part of the problem is the gentrification, is the much significantly higher rate of black people being killed by cops. And again, the cops are founded by a lot of white supremacists. You know, that's just what it is.
Yeah, yeah. I actually could pull up the PBS article right now that shows the infiltration of the KKK and alt-right members in the police forces throughout the United States right now.
Right.
It's not hidden. It's very in plain sight. The FBI has been researching this since the 60s. The FBI is responsible for some of it. CIA is responsible for some of it. Like, this isn't... These are all facts. Please, by all means, Google this shit. I am not making things up.
Right.
Yeah, I just feel like people want to bury their heads in the sand. If you are denying this, you are in denial. There's facts and proof shown in everyday life and statistics.
I mean, look, the thing about, you know,
it's very obvious.
And the thing about with Asians out there, and, you know, so because someone brings up Asians out there, we were painted as the model minority. We're used as a weapon, and as soon as COVID happened, you've seen exactly how that turned out. You know, all of a sudden, the racism towards Asians just cropped out. Because up until then, you know, what were we? We were the model minority. If you look at the number of Asian people and how many jobs they take up in the Silicon Valley industry, in the computer industry, and you look at the percentage of employees that are Asian there, and then look at the percentage of CEOs and high positions in those companies, Asians do not have the same proportion in those situations.
No, those are all white guys.
Right. And then not only
old white men.
Yeah, and not only on top of that as well, I mean, this is kind of a weird joke, but I mean, it's kind of true, but like Asians also give a lot of, you know, I'm just going to say it just gives a lot of white guys their submissive Asian girls that they are all a fan of, you know. And that's it's honestly, there's a lot of truth to that too. So like it's used, it's still a used kind of thing. You know what I mean? And it's there is a lot of built into the society, a lot into the country, you know. And we're trying to fight that. And like I said, the worst part about it is that Black and Asians have always been pitted against each other. They've always been pitted against each other, and that needs to stop. And like I said, I have to fix a lot of my own things myself. You know, everybody does, and that's the thing.
Yeah, I would say everybody has to work on something for sure.
You have to, and that's maturity, that's growth, is looking internally, looking at yourself, and figuring out that because one of the reasons why that maybe a lot of these people don't want to accept the truth is because they want to believe that they're not racist. I'm not racist because racists are bad people. I can't be racist. But one of the most important things to do is to admit that you are subconsciously racist, you know, and like, you know, have this kind of understanding that, you know, there is a lot of inherent in there that you have to get over, and you have to look at yourself. You have to be willing to improve yourself. So.
And no, James was not saying that Asian men give Asian women over. He's saying that Asian women are lusted after by a lot of white men for being submissive and
because of
that weird kink fantasy that I shouldn't say weird, whatever. No kink shaming. You know what I'm saying? It's that fantasy that they want fulfilled. Like that's very very common.
Yeah, it's a real thing. It's a real thing. So
that's why I don't look at chat.
Yeah, I feel you,
dude. It's.
If I look at chat, I'm gonna burst a goddamn bubble, dude. Fucking. It's not my job as a black man to educate anybody on this shit. This shit is directly in front of us. It's shown. And the fact that it even needs to be felt to be educated just shows that you are unwilling to even try, and you just want to continuously put someone down.
Right.
I am so fucking tired.
No, dude. I mean, that's why I haven't streamed in like a week and a half, because I'm tired of this shit, and I'm not even the one that, you know, is being affected as much by it as you are. You know what I mean? This affects you directly. You've had to have the talk. You know, you understand a lot of the things, like Katana Prime telling that story that when he's in a car, he has to tell all of his friends to let him do the talking because he's the lightest skinned black person in the car and things like that. You know, like, these are, like, when Katana Prime told that story, like, that shit was like, I have never had to think about that. Like, that's crazy that that's even a thing to think about. Yet every black person in America probably knows the truth of that story. There was that other story that somebody told that, you know, they drove their friend into a neighborhood and they were going to run into their house and grab something, and they said, you can stay in the car and wait. And the guy was like, the guy who was black was like, is it safe for me to stay in the car and wait? Like, I never had to think about that. Like, when that person told that story, I was like, oh shit, I never even had to think about that. You know, these are realistic things that, you know, that you have to think about. And these are the problems, right? And again, look, this is obviously not the time to talk about this. I'm timing you out again, because if you're just gonna keep pressing on it, then it's not worth it. It's not worth it, because we obviously can't educate.
The information's out there.
Right.
You kept using anecdotal evidence from your own eyes, rather than using your own eyes to go do research.
Yeah.
And that just shows willful ignorance.
Yeah.
And that's just anti-productive to what we're talking about, what we want to do on this podcast. And, you know, it's hurtful to people on this podcast. So,
yeah, it's hurtful to people everywhere.
Stop.
Dude. It's like, it's just one of those things that you have to be willing to understand. You have to be able to look into your own soul, you know, and it's one of the hardest things to do. It's why I always even say, you know, to bring it back to fighting games in a weird way, you know, that I think fighting games are one of the hardest things to get good at, is because a lot of fighting games is admitting that you suck, is admitting, is admitting that you have all these weaknesses, right? And one of the best ways to get good at fighting games is to realize, like, when I was playing Street Fighter and I'm trying to get to platinum, you know, when I was in gold, I was like, why can't I get into platinum? I'm having so much trouble, blah, blah, blah. And I just sat back and I was like, why do I think I deserve to be in platinum? I'm not studying this game. I'm not practicing. I play like once every 2 weeks. Like, I don't deserve to be in platinum. And so I worked hard, and it was one of the things that I had to look with inside myself and tell myself that. Same thing about, like, you know, this kind of racism kind of situation. Maybe you don't want to admit that it's happening because you don't want to admit to yourself that you're a racist or something, or that, you know, the people that you know that you're racist, or that this country that is supposedly so great is completely built on top of racism, you know, that, you know.
From day one till today.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to push it, Peter. I mean, if Isaiah wants to talk, he can talk. But, you know, obviously this is just one of those things that's, like, super frustrating and very personal for him.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be real. If I was Isaiah, I'd be going off right now. I'm impressed with his restraint.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, I went off, 2 weeks ago when we streamed on someone.
Yeah.
So, and I'm not, I'm a white, cis, straight male in America. I have all the fucking privilege. And I was pissed off, so I can only imagine how he feels.
Yeah.
I have been going off every day on someone trying to tell them, like, you don't understand what the fuck you're talking about, or why your actions are even subconsciously racist or this or that, and no one wants to fucking listen, and no one wants to get educated. Even those that are not even specifically trying to be toxic or anything like that, right? I have wasted so much energy and what feels like my entire fucking life force just trying to explain to people just the littlest of shit, and they do not want to listen. And so rather than give myself a goddamn hernia, a brain aneurysm, whatever the hell I'm stressed, I would like to just I just don't want to deal with it, dude. Like, I've already... people that I thought were, like, cool to talk to or whatever, I have already completely just, like, gotten rid of on social media and stuff, because I can't even look at the shit that they're saying.
Yeah.
Just stuff like that. Like, it's...
And you know, that's the craziest part, right? You know, it's like Brandon said, I feel that way, because I'm retweeting this stuff, and I'm arguing with people, I'm talking to people on you know, Twitter all the time, and you know, arguing with a bunch of people about this stuff. And like I said, I'm Asian. I'm not even getting affected by this. You know, it's knowing, you know, that you are black and you have to deal with this shit. You're not even just defending for the sake of like, hey, we need universal health care, you know, because it would be cool and everything. You're arguing this because this is literally whether you live or die. You know, like this is
or anybody in my family lives
exactly.
Or dies. If my brother comes home from work, is he gonna get a routine stop?
Right, exactly.
And then just that's it.
This is
my little brother gonna walk home after, you know, fucking hanging out with his friends?
Exactly.
And, you know, he had a Snickers bar in his fucking pocket.
Right.
And that's a gun.
This is
like a gun to me.
This is a life or death situation here, and it is not an accident. And that's the thing that we have to understand. And that's the hardest part to understand, that it's not an accident, that it is something that this country has just done. And, you know, if you feel bad about it and you hate it, then you fight it and you do what we can to fix it and change it. If you don't like admitting that, if you don't like the fact that all of our history books are completely scrubbed of a lot of this, you know, that we talk about Martin Luther King Jr. like he's like the most peaceful man on the planet, you know,
completely whitewashed.
Right. Like if this doesn't make you comfortable, if you're not happy about this, then do something about it. Look within yourself and try to change it.
That's the point. It's not fucking comfortable at all.
Right.
It's never been comfortable.
Don't.
One of the things that I noticed from a lot of people was when that old man got pushed down by that guard and we thought maybe he had died, everybody was like, oh, I can't watch this video. You know, it's too much. Right? And then the first thing that I thought about that was, I have watched black people on video on the news actually die daily. Whereas
George Floyd
can't watch this one white dude possibly die because of this thing that happened. It's too uncomfortable, right? Well, this is exactly that's you might be getting to understand like how we feel. Maybe just a little bit. You might be understanding a little bit.
Right.
Because that's the uncomfortability, that's the rage, that's the sadness, the depression that we have to go through each time this shit happens. It's there in front of you. It's even happening to your own fucking people, and you still don't want to acknowledge it.
And like I said, a lot of it is tough to swallow, but growth comes from discomfort, right? You don't go to the gym and swing on a hammock and expect to get stronger. You know what I mean? Like, you go to the gym because it's painful, and growth is painful. Growth is always going to be painful. And that's just kind of how it is, right? You know, why do people love those stupid training montages in like movies and stuff like that? Because they see the person suffering in the shortest amount of time, and then all of a sudden they're like,
hard to make a change.
Yeah, and all of a sudden they're super strong. Oh, look, all of a sudden I'm great at this. You know, it's like all that kind of stuff. But, you know, real growth is suffering through large amounts of period and understanding what is actually happening. And again, you know, yes, our history is very uncomfortable. You know, Christopher Columbus is not a hero. You know, like, he is not a hero. He's a terrible human being. And, you know, it's tough because, you know, it requires that inner look, that inner. Now, obviously, this is not the same situation for everybody. There's a lot of people out there who are just rich and they just want to maintain the status quo. So they're going to do everything they can to maintain the status quo as possible, and that they really are just racist and they're assholes and fuck them and they need to go, they need to die and be launched into the sun. But like, you know, the problem is that because they're the ones in power, they have the ability to control the gentrification, the border lines, which communities get funding, all these things like that. And they have the power to drive the narrative the way they can. Right? And so when they have the power, when you have peaceful protesters, how you make them look bad by attacking them first and causing them to riot and then only showing the riot footage out there. If we didn't have cell phones, like, can you imagine the amount of disinformation that we would have right now?
I want you to actually imagine that for a moment, because that's what's been happening.
Right.
Yeah, I would say I can't imagine it, because that's real life.
And that's the problem, is that for the first time, the reason why this particular protest has been so eye-opening is because we've actually been able to see the truth now. You know, the report for Breonna Taylor just came out, and there's nothing in there.
It was blank. It said she was uninjured.
Right. There's literally nothing in there that talks about her even being shot or that they weren't forceful entry unannounced. Like this, and then
they passed a law specifically related to Breonna Taylor's death, and they still haven't even arrested or fired or anything.
Yeah, I was just about to say it. That's fucking wild. They admit that it was wrong.
Right.
And they still done nothing about the officers that broke into her home and
Right.
shot and killed her.
And that's the thing, right? Because, like, literally the cell phone has changed everything. The individual camera has changed everything because it has prevented people from lying about this shit now. There was the other black guy who got arrested, and like the cop went up to there and like forcefully spread his legs and like caused him to fall on the ground and everything. And then you read the police report and it's like he was talking about how he's like resisting arrest and doing all this stuff, and literally the guy was doing nothing. And because
the police report for the white man who got pushed down was that he was aggressive and trying sorry, it wasn't that he was aggressive, it was that
he tripped and fell.
A different one, because it was that he tripped and fell.
Yeah.
This was a video that was taken from multiple angles and shown to the world on multiple different accounts.
Right. And so
the fact that I am legitimately just getting mixed up between police reports at this point, falsified police reports is a bit ridiculous.
Yep.
But the fact that they're just willing to say that, he tripped and fell, dude. Like, he didn't, nothing happened to him.
Yeah, it's a wild world out there, man.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is the way that we're going to get through it is when we accept it. And when we accept that this is what's happening and that this is a problem. And, like, it is buried deep within our culture, within our society and everything like that. And also very much on the surface as well at the same time. But we're not going to remove the problem by putting a coat of paint over a wall that has been chewed up by termites on the inside. We have to replace the entire fucking wall. And that's what we have to start doing at this point. And that's where the defund the police, abolish the police, kind of things are coming from. We need to not just, hey, let's just change this. Like, let's try to, we actually have to go in there and fix it from the inside. So
90% of the stuff that people are suggesting get changed. These chokeholds or whatever the fuck that police are administering when they're grabbing people are already illegal. They're already not allowed within the police force, and it doesn't matter. Obviously, and I can't even believe I need to say this, murder is not legal.
I was gonna say, imagine telling a group of people, hey guys, listen, here's rules that you shouldn't break, when they're already breaking all the fucking rules.
Right.
Like, adding more rules doesn't mean shit. Everybody doesn't follow the rules, so...
It's not even just that. Like, the rule was already there. It's not even just adding rules.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, they're not following the rules that are in place. What makes you think slapping them on the wrist and saying, here's some more rules, they're going to start listening?
Right.
That's not how this shit works.
It doesn't fucking work. It really doesn't. Just like how anybody trying to tell people that, like, oh, you have to be incredibly peaceful. There's no way, being anything but peaceful will change anything doesn't work, because MLK was very peaceful despite the fact that he didn't want to be as peaceful as he was.
Dude, he's the one who said that protesting and rioting is the language of the unheard. Like, he literally said that. Like,
he was very much for this type of thing, right? But like, he's the model black person of protest, right? That a lot of white people like to go to.
I mean, that's what they painted him to be after his death.
Right.
What did they do to him?
They killed him. They
fucking killed him.
Yeah.
He was murdered.
Why don't you be like MLK so that we can assassinate you?
So we can shoot you.
Yeah.
Like, just be like MLK so we can kill you.
Yeah.
That's literally what they're trying to paint in our faces.
Yeah.
Like, it's every time they come up with these dumbass fucking, like, oh, you have to do it this way. Of course it's incorrect, because if the way we're doing it is incorrect is because it's not the way that you want things to be.
Yeah, a protest that goes unheard is not a protest at all.
So it's yeah.
Anyway.
However, in Minneapolis, we are completely going to reform the police.
Yeah.
So that's cool. I don't know how that's going to look, but I'm excited to find out.
We'll see.
And and I will say this. I really hate the abolish the police and the defund the police movement, because I really hate the fucking wording that they use for that, because, like, it's obfuscated what it's actually trying to do. Yeah, it makes it feel like that, hey, let's just not have police, which is not...
I mean, yeah, that's how right-wingers are going to try to twist that.
Right, exactly.
So what it actually means is demilitarize the police, take that funding and putting it into... neighborhoods that need the money, put that into education, put that into not a police department, but people that can actually be certified to help out in crisis situations, et cetera, et cetera.
And then
the
also
police will never be gone.
Right, and to gut the police so that the history and the bro culture of hiring other of the white supremacist friends can be erased. I made the example, right? Like doctors. What is it, like 8 years of study that you have to go through, because
minimum.
You have to and like internship and residency and stuff, because you need to make sure you don't kill anybody. And if somebody dies under your care with malpractice lawsuits and all this, your career can be destroyed as a doctor, because people's lives are in your hands. And yet police, has the exact same lives, in their hands. What do they say? 110 hours or something like that?
Yeah.
Or training or shit? Like honestly, to become a police officer, you should have to go to college. You should have a criminology degree that teaches you psychology, that teaches you, de-escalation, that teaches you humanity and sympathy for other people, to understand, the Hippocratic Oath kind of thing that you got to do for being a doctor and stuff like that. This is what we mean by abolish the police, is we need to remove what's there now and replace it with something that actually works and makes it what it should be.
They don't even do a de-escalation class for a full week. It is, I believe, by hours, it's like 2 days. I think it was like 48 hours of de-escalation total.
And it's probably all lip service anyway, because the thing about it is, a lot of the times their interests are not in de-escalation, because clearly most of the time their interest is in escalation. Because
it's an intimidation. Right.
The more angry you get, one, you can intimidate people and show your authority, or two, if they aren't intimidated, then that gives you the excuse to kill them and put it on your police report that they were aggressive. But
resisting. Because
of the culture that we have now, every time someone gets aggressive, a cell phone comes out. And now we know. The thing about it is we knew all along, but we just had no way to prove it. And and it was ambiguous enough that you know, the people of color, the people that were being oppressed, didn't have the ammunition to fight against it, to show that, look, the police are lying, because, you know, we're taught when we're kids, what do you want to, when you grow up? A policeman, you know, like, they're supposed to be our heroes. And so when you hear the policeman say they were being aggressive, you're like, yeah, they probably were. And then you just believe it. But now, because in this society, in this day and age, because everything is filmed, we're kind of living in this weird Truman Show world where we see everything now. Because everybody are the eyes, we can see the truth behind things now. And what's happening right now in the country is that everybody's eyes are being opened up to the truth, and it's making a lot of people very uncomfortable. And that's why you do get a lot of these people pushing back to it. And that's why I keep saying the way that we're going to grow past this is to accept the discomfort, accept the fact that this is a problem in our country, and let's all figure out how to fix it. And again, it's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take fucking forever, because all the people in power who have the ability to pass the laws and shit like that have no interest in this shit. But the more we educate our generation, the more we educate the people younger than us, the more they're going to grow up and understand that, you know, this is not right, and that we can start replacing a lot of those old people in power and actually try to get to something, you know, that, I mean, you see how blind people are when people are like, oh, why can't our music and our TV shows be non-political, when like Star Trek and like Rage Against the fucking Machine, you know,
X-Men.
X-Men, dude. I can't believe that guy told, you know, Tom Morello, you know, why are you being so political? The guy who's fucking Rage Against the Machine, dude.
Tom Morello fucking bodied that dude, too.
Dude, oh, God, it's so wild. Like, it's, and like I said, the more that we understand, yes, you should feel uncomfortable. And it's a good thing that you are feeling uncomfortable about it, because then it means you have a conscience and that you understand that it's wrong. But the main thing you have to understand now is, why do you feel uncomfortable? Is it guilt? Is it because you want to be supreme over other people of color? You know, look inside yourself and figure it out. If you do turn out to be a racist piece of shit, well then, you know, like I said, go. You
got some work to do.
Take a short walk take a long walk off a short pier. You know, like seriously. But if it is something that makes you feel uncomfortable because you're like, I'm not racist, then look inside yourself and figure out why you are actually racist. You know, I mean, like, I'm sitting here talking about this. Am I this model of lack of racism? Hell no. I still have a lot of accidental inherent racism, you know, built into me by years and years of programming from society that I'm working on it. But the way that I can get around it is by accepting the fact that a lot of this is subconscious and a lot of this has been programmed into me, and that's manifested itself into blatant racism, and that I'm trying to be better about it. I am using the discomfort to try to be a better person at this point. You know, it's just what it is. So
go ahead.
If you feel the ability to accept uncomfortability over this, rather than having being constantly thrust upon you, then you have to understand that you have a privilege in that manner. Yes. Because you can accept that you're uncomfortable, right? We just feel uncomfortable
24/7.
It's just like that. There's no, you know, I'm just gonna not think about it today. Mm-hmm. That's not how it is. It's always there.
Well, I mean, the minute, not to interrupt you, but the minute that, you know, a black man or a minority in America in general stops thinking about it, their life is at risk. You know, like, it has to be in your mind. It has to be. And that's fucked up. There's no better way to put it. That's fucked up. That's not okay.
And it's one of the reasons why I am mad that I'm not out there protesting, because I have the option to stay at home and be kind of depressed and whatever. I have this option. I can take my mind off of it, because I don't have to worry about my brother being killed. I don't have to worry about my parents being killed, or my best friends, or my buddies that I grew up with in my neighborhood. I don't have to worry about this stuff, and that's my privilege, and that's absolutely my privilege, and that's why I don't feel like streaming, because I have the ability to stream and ignore this shit. I have the ability to lay there and binge on Avatar because, like, I don't have to think about the shit. By the way, Avatar hits very differently now in this day and age. I mean, seriously.
There's a lot of allegories and other such things related to this very topic, in fact, in Avatar.
Yeah.
And that was several years ago, but the same could be said of many other TV shows. Because the reason why is because this has existed since very, very far back, and people have been trying to teach that sort of thing since very far back, and for whatever reason it just flies on over their heads. Right, like the whole obviously apparently Rage Against the Machine, nobody knew it was fucking political.
X-Men, dude.
I knew the title of the fucking band.
Yeah, I know.
It's the dishwasher, bro. They're trying to rage against the dishwasher.
Mad at your iPad, homie?
I mean, like X-Men's not even subtle about it. The cartoon
that's
that
what it was created for.
Yeah, like that's literally the whole point of it. Like one of my favorite lines in X-Men 2 was when Iceman's mom like was talking to him. He's like, "Have you ever just tried not being a mutant?" You know, like it's like right there in your face. They're not even trying. You know, like they're not even trying to hide it. It's
they're
like
not trying to hide it because they're outwardly trying to show it.
Right, exactly.
It's there. It's a very clear thing that's happening, and it's been happening for so long. The entire country was built off people that first they stole the land from the people that lived here, right?
Right.
And then they built on top of that land by forcing other people to come here, and then using their blood, their sweat, their tears, their literally just their bodies, and in any way, shape, or form, just to build this country.
And yeah, I mean, you know why the yellow peril happened, actually, relating it to like even the Asian stuff, and people saying, oh, Asians aren't being sorry, not to interrupt you, I apologize about that, but it was because they brought over a bunch of Filipino slaves to build the railroads. And what ended up happening was that there was a bunch of these shirtless, like super muscled Asian guys out there that all the girls started getting stolen, like literally. Yes, this is actually the truth, and so
I know.
And what
a lot of those Asian guys that were forced to build the railroads, in a lot of the history books, if you check it out, they talk about how a lot of them came over voluntarily, actually.
Yeah.
I actually remember this because specifically I've had to think about it twice because I was like, was that something that they were just telling us that they came over voluntarily? And I mean, to be fair, some of them probably did because at the time there was like a lot of money in building those railroads, right? But I can guarantee a larger portion of them were not exactly voluntary.
Yeah, there was also another silent actor named Cecily Hayakawa who was basically the first foreign heartthrob before Valentino. And he was so loved by all the women that Hollywood felt threatened. People felt threatened. And so that's why Hollywood went the opposite route and made all Asian characters as demasculated as possible. There's a reason why it's like that. There's a reason, and that still holds through, right? That's why you can't get Asian people starring as like the main action hero of something unless they know kung fu, right? Like, because there's still that inherent racism built into the country.
Years later.
Like I wonder, sometimes we were talking about earlier, I haven't been on ESPN to do fighting game commentary. Maybe because I'm Asian. There's absolutely, there's absolutely a logic behind that, and I wonder that to myself, and I hate wondering about that because I don't want to believe that's the case, but sometimes I have to wonder about that, right? And so these are the things that we have to accept are built into our country, that a lot of the systemic racism is built so deeply rooted in our country that the only way to fight it is to acknowledge it, to unearth it, and to completely wipe it away. And like I said, it's going to take much longer than we're going to be alive for that to be fixed. But we can definitely sow the seeds. we can definitely get things started. You know. Yeah.
I mean, things have been started. We're just continuing the fight, and hopefully, something comes of it.
Because like I said, I mean, the crazy thing is that, I said this as well before in my stream, that, some of the speeches that you see a lot of the black men give, like Muhammad Ali, like a bunch of the guys back in the 60s, you can give the same speech right now and it applies like literally 1-to-1, right?
Yeah, it's which is so fucked up.
Right.
Why are we still there?
And
50, 60 years later, why are we still there?
And like I said, right now, the biggest difference is that we have the cell phone. And it is changing a lot of stuff because now we get to see shit. History is written by the winners. That's always the way that it works. You talk about, nowadays everyone's like, oh, rioting is terrible, looting is terrible. Our history book talks about the Boston Tea Party like as one of the greatest moments of America history because that established America was like the...
It's literally the same thing.
Right.
Like, it doesn't even make sense.
Yeah, and now everyone's like, oh, looting is bad, blah, 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 but like Boston Tea Party was like taught in our history books as like this great moment where we looted and destroyed a bunch of rich people's stuff, the oppressors' stuff, and now that's how we started the movement and everything like that.
That's because there's a bunch of white people doing it.
Yeah. Turns out this time though that it's other people that are being oppressed by the white people. It's not just white people being oppressed by the white people.
So it's historically speaking, years from now, like centuries from now, this is going to be, I mean, I hope, fingers crossed that this is a major turning point, that 2020 is going to be one of the most fascinating historical years that people are going to...
It already is.
People are going to read about it and be like, this was like the turning point, and they'll study it and be like, it's so fascinating how it was the cell phone that kind of fixed that like changed everything kind of stuff. Who would have thought? And I hope people can come back and look at this time that way, because that means that we succeeded, and that now history is being won and being written by the people of color, and we can tell the stories of what actually happened. That we can, it was interesting when I was in Germany, when we were talking about like all the camps and everything like that. One of the guys on the army base was telling me that they visited all the Japanese internment camps in California, and they've swept all that shit under the rug. They don't talk about that shit in history. They just don't.
George Takei was in a Japanese internment camp.
Yeah.
Like someone who is currently alive and had been acting very recently was in one of those camps.
Did you see the photo of the old lady who drove up to all the protesters and pulled out the tattoo? Yeah, Like that shit is that just it's right there in your face. You know what I mean?
Yeah, everybody wants to talk about these things as happening so long ago, right? Like as if it was like, oh, that was forever ago. Things have changed since then. It was very recent, all of it.
Yeah, it was. So
I mean, compared to the rest of the planet, America's a very young country.
Incredibly.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that.
And I said,
it's forever ago, but it really wasn't.
No.
And like I said, I mean, this is not to say, and again, what I don't want this to make it feel like is like, oh, we're just sitting here hating on America. America's the only, like we said, UK has had this problem, a lot, racism problems.
South Africa.
Japan had a protest and is currently having protests over police brutality.
Yeah. And
Japan.
People.
The supposedly model country that every white person wants to fucking be like, oh, there's no politics over there, and there's none of this shit.
And
they have been having protests. They have been putting up signs that are Black Lives Matter, because it's not just that they're obviously talking about the protests, but they understand that the struggle is the same.
Right.
And they have to be solidarity.
And this is in a country that 2 people were killed by guns in 2019, I think it was. 2 people.
It's a very, very small number.
Yeah.
Right.
And, like I said, I can't sit here and be like, oh, white people bad, Asian people amazing, because China's fucking terrible too, right? China has so many atrocities and racism going on over there in that country. One of the reasons why Japan is problematic is because they are very xenophobic in Japan. So it's, it happens all over the place. And so this is just, this is a problem that's big. But the thing about it is, though, you know, in America, like, all these innocent black people are dying for it. You know, I don't care if you've robbed a convenience store in the past. You don't deserve to be killed. You know, like, you're going to use that to try to justify it. It's not a justification. It's not a justification. Because
you especially don't deserve to die Judge Dredd style in the street.
Right. And especially because, like I said, if you take a white person with the exact same crimes, they're not going to die. The person...
You don't even have to think about that hypothetically. That's happened.
Right.
That's been a thing.
Dude, the guy who drove into the crowd and then people attacked him and he shot someone in the shoulder from his car, and then he got out of the car, and what did he do? He ran to the police for safety.
With gun in hand.
With gun in hand. He
That dude is also a head of the KKK.
Yeah. He
That was not an accident. He was trying to kill people.
He shot someone right there. And the police did not tear gas him or beat him with batons.
They didn't arrest him. They provided him safety.
Yeah, they protected him.
Mm-hmm. There was the one other guy who ran. I don't even think you're talking about the same one that I'm talking about, Brandon, because there was another one where someone, you know, ran over people.
Seattle, where he drove his car into the crowd. Someone came up to his window and he shot him in the arm.
Okay,
right?
yeah, because there was another guy.
That dude is a head of the KKK.
There's another guy who ran over a bunch of people and then was basically smoking cigarettes and joking with the police.
Oh, yeah.
They didn't have him in handcuffs?
What I'm talking about is
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
There was also here in the state that I currently live in, the police were specifically warning Proud Boys and others of white supremacy to move away from areas right before they would escalate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I saw that. I saw those videos.
Yeah.
And you know, I mean, again, that's no surprise to me because I know the history of the state.
Yeah.
It was in the state's constitution for a very long time that it was just straight up ass illegal to be black.
Mm-hmm.
Right. You're just illegal for existing. You
Right.
like stop being black or you know it's an illegality. Like what the fuck. So
again,
it doesn't surprise me, but yeah, it's just right there in front of you. Like
Right.
the videos are there. It's not hard to find.
The thing that I'm trying to highlight here is that you cannot justify the loss of human life in that situation. You just can't. You know, and that's why all the photos of all the innocent black people who have died, they always show the pictures of them mean mugging cameras and stuff like that. But then whenever, you know, oh, hey, I'm a Stanford student and I raped a girl behind a dumpster, but here's my photo of me smiling and looking all nice and dressed in my school photo.
Yep.
He has a promising swimming career, so we can't possibly punish him. He was caught raping a girl behind a dumpster. You know, does that mean if George Floyd deserved to die for robbing a convenience store, does that mean we should shoot Brock Turner as well? That's basically what you're saying then, right? Is it justified to go and shoot him?
The dumbest part about that is he didn't actually rob a convenience store. They thought he had a counterfeit $20 bill.
Right, and he didn't even have one, so... I mean, whatever it was that people have dug up about his past, about, oh, he did this, he had a felony for this, or whatever, I don't fucking care. Like, that's not the point. The point is that it's completely imbalanced, right? If that's the case, then like I said, we should be having people going and fucking shooting Brock Turner, like, you know, right away. I'm not saying please go do that. I'm just saying, like, then you would feel the same way.
By that logic.
What's that?
By your logic, by the logic of
right, yeah. So what I'm saying is then, if that did happen to him, you should also feel the same way and have zero sympathy, right? But the reason why you have zero sympathy for George Floyd is because he's black, is because our society has painted blacks as less than human, and that's why you can come up with all this excuses and be like, oh, okay, see, then it's okay. No, it's not. It's never okay. It's just never okay. So that's the thing.
You gotta remember, he had a counterfeit $20 bill. You know, he's not allowed to bring.
Right.
Like.
And so that's the thing. Is like, regardless, then you shouldn't even bring up anything he's done in the past. There's no reason to say he attacked a pregnant woman. What does that have to do with anything? What does that have to do with anything? That's my point, is that you don't bring that shit up because it just is so completely irrelevant to the conversation. It has nothing to do with the conversation except to demean him and to make it so you don't feel bad that he died. And that's it. That's the only reason
that's what I was saying. That's exactly what I was saying with burying your head in the sand before.
Yeah.
Being in denial. Making excuses.
Exactly.
Dehumanizing the person that died.
Exactly. And that's why, like I said, I mean, the picture they showed of some kid who like did something or other was like him kind of mean mugging. And literally they cropped out the bottom half of the picture. And when you looked at the bottom half of the picture, he was holding like a candy heart box. And it was like "For My Love" or something like that.
Yeah, it was his dead daughter.
Yeah, it was like his dead daughter that he was being very grim and serious about. And they cut that part out so they could just show the serious face and put him in an article, Like it's manufactured. It's intentional. It's intentional. Or like I said, subconscious racism, because as a person, as a news editor, you just feel like that's what you're supposed to do, right? That's kind of, and like when all the COVID articles started coming out, every photograph was of an Asian person with a mask on.
Mm-hmm.
Every photograph
was an Asian person because
wasn't
spreading the virus, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, our president doesn't help.
Yeah,
calling it the Wuhan virus, China virus, et cetera, et cetera. Like that absolutely helped spread the racism.
Right, and it's all built in. It's all built in. I want to give people credit and believe that a lot of it is subconscious and accidental, but it's not. I mean, when fucking Jeremy Lin was playing really well on the Knicks at that one point in time for that week or two, and he was amazing, and then all of a sudden he started playing badly. The ESPN article headline was "There's a chink in the armor." Like,
Jesus.
You think that's an accident? You really think that's an accident? I mean, come on.
There's so many phrases you could say for this person's starting to play poorly.
Right.
There's so many phrases.
Yeah.
And like, all right, so you could pretend it's an accident. How does it make it through other people reviewing it? They don't give a shit.
Right.
At least two people saw that, because there has to be an editor.
Right.
At least two grown human beings saw that, and we're just like, yep, put it up there.
Yep.
At least.
And that's the thing, right?
Give me pictures of Spider-Man.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty much. Give me pictures of Jeremy Lin sucking.
Fucking J. Jonah Jameson. And, that's just what it is. And, again, it's obviously, we can say that the podcast was derailed a little bit, but, I talked about this to Brandon a little bit, that I felt like I was a little held back last time we talked about it because I was still scared. And that's part of it too, right? I know I'm scared to talk about this because I'm afraid of the backlash. I'm afraid of the people coming after me kind of situation. And that's how they control you, right? They scare you into this kind of control. And so, I'm kind of glad we did get to talk about it this week, because I'm glad I really get to speak my mind on this kind of thing, because this isn't just this isn't something that's just going to happen this week and then it's going to go. Like, this shit is a conversation that needs to keep going for the next few years. This conversation
until it's fixed.
It doesn't stop.
Yeah,
until it's fixed.
Because the second it stops is the second it's allowed again.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And what's interesting about it is we've already seen it, because at one point in time, it wasn't that we were finding out that it was deeply rooted. It's just that the people who were racist were kind of actually seen at, like, they felt like they were the minority and they couldn't say much about it. Then Trump got elected, and that's when it kind of exploded, because it gave them the ability to...
Yeah, they felt they had the safe space to be racist, sexist shit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And
yeah, when people were crying over Trump got elected, they weren't crying because it was like, oh no, it's a shitty president. No, it was one of the worst situations that could happen.
Any of us that cried when we saw this. This is what we saw coming. All of it.
And interestingly enough, I mean, like I said, in a weird way, this could be the Darth Vader syndrome, right? Where you just, like, the evil has to happen so that we can get to the good. You know what I mean? So that, he has revealed the true colors of our country, so that now we can actually figure out how to root it out and get rid of it. That's the whole thing.
Yeah, I hope that's what happens. I hope we're not headed towards a path of totalitarianism and authoritarianism. I hope that. Well, I mean, I hope he's out of office come November. But yeah, I agree, James. I really, that was one of the first things that I said when the first protest started happening in Minneapolis. I remember talking to friends and saying, I hope it doesn't stop here. And then literally the next day, it was in every major city in America.
Yeah,
and it was amazing to see happen.
When it's all 50 states simultaneously, clearly there's a fucking problem.
Yeah.
Right.
And then the rest of the world chimed in as well.
When the rest of the world chimed in, it was powerful.
Yeah.
They really don't want you to understand that it's not just America that's like freaking out about a police brutality issue, because if you recognize the rest of the world is also doing this, that there's protests about police brutality everywhere, then you'll start recognizing like, hey, maybe this makes sense that there's police brutality, and there's a reason why these people are fighting for this shit.
Right. Yeah, but unfortunately, I hate to be the wet blanket here to bring this up, but I know we're keeping Brandon up way late at this point.
No, actually, I was gonna say we can keep going if you guys are down. Like, I don't want to stop talking. A, and B, I called off sick today, and I'm calling off sick. I guess again, I want to say today is the same day for me now, but yeah, I'm calling off Friday morning too, because I hate my fucking job, and it makes me physically ill to work. So I'm looking for other options at the moment. If anybody knows any remote work, I have data entry, customer service, and client management experience. But outside of that, I hate my job. So I'm not working tomorrow. I'm literally setting my alarm for like 5 a.m. so I can email my boss that I'm still sick and I'm going back to sleep.
Well,
so we can keep going.
The other concern I have, obviously, is just, mental health state right now. I know Isaiah obviously came in this hoping to talk about PlayStation 5 and all this shit like this, and this happened again, and
I wasn't expecting it to not come up at all. I was definitely expecting to talk about it without question.
Okay.
It's just there's a reason why I don't look at the chat.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
It's because I expect this to happen. Right. And it comes up anyway, and it's gonna happen. But it's just you think maybe for just a minute you can talk about something else, just for fucking 10 minutes, and it doesn't matter. Like you open up the chat because people are asking about it, and then some asshole has got to ruin it.
Right.
All this shit.
It's and again, it's obviously, there's going to always be people like, well, aren't you guys doing the same because you're not listening to the other side or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But you have to realize that, a lot of the things that we're talking about is acceptance of other people, is about, love, is about equality, is about, these concepts that, we know are right,
So like there are two things related to that. One, someone's life is not a fucking opinion.
Right.
This is not coffee. The taste of your fucking coffee is an opinion. Whether you want 2 sugars in that shit, that's an opinion. Whether or not a black person deserves to live, whether or not a trans person has rights, whether or not, gay people can marry, those are not opinions. It's the dumbest shit on the fucking planet. The other thing is I've actually tried to sit down and listen to someone tell me the other side, and then try to talk to them about it. I mentioned this earlier. I have spoken with these people day in and day fucking out, and they refuse to listen regardless of what evidence is shown, what's actually happening in the world, regardless of how patient you are with them, right? No matter what, it does not matter to them. And so at that point, what is the point of listening to more people's other sides? Right. The only thing that it grants you is more stress.
Right.
Facts.
The weirdest part about it is, like, a lot of the things that I say, a lot of things that I talk about, a lot of my arguments are built off of my own understanding and own philosophy and own drive to try to be a good person. And a lot of times when I hear people, when they argue from the other side, it is, like I said, it's Fox News parroting. You know what I mean? They say it. It's the stuff that they come up with, some sort of crazy conspiracy theory, like some old man was scanning the police things or he tripped and fell. And like, you know, even though it's clear as day, there's video footage of it out there, you know, like people come up with these crazy, it's like the mental gymnastics, like you were saying, but because it spreads and enough people say it, it becomes a truth to them. But it's not something that they sat down and just were like thinking about themselves. You know what I mean? It's not like,
right.
It's not like, well, George Floyd didn't deserve, it's, you know, he had a terrible background. He had all these, you know, crimes and everything like that. Like at what point of man should not be killed by police? Like that is just like, that's not an argument. That's
and it's not even a political stance either.
Right, exactly. You know, like
human lives are not a political stance.
It's not like, yeah, you're not being left or right wing when you say that person should not die.
Right. So when you counter that by saying, but he had a criminal background, but it's, look, more white people die, but, you know, when you say these things out like that, you know, it is a way to try to, it, like I said, it's not a philosophical kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's you trying to lessen the blow of the wrongness of it. Whereas we're sitting here just saying people shouldn't be killed. Like, and that again is, I mean, look, if the problem in the country was that Asian people would be dying, then we would all be yelling Asian lives matter. Not, you know, and if it's the black people, if it was the white people that were being killed the most, we would be sitting here talking about how white lives matter, right? It's not about we're trying to prop up any particular community. Like that one girl who said it, it's like, you better be glad that we're not looking for revenge, you know, that we're just here for equality. That's, you know, that's what is being fought for here. It's equality. We're fighting for equality here because right now, that's not what black people have. They do not have equality. They are being treated less than human. And so we're fighting for the equality for it.
There's a reason why multiple races, regardless of whether or not they're black, come in to these protests with Black Lives Matter sign.
Mm-hmm.
Because they know, just like we know, that if it wasn't us on the chopping block right now, it would be them.
Right.
Facts.
One of the things that happened was when we were all trying to like talk about ICE and protest ICE and shit, the person who climbed was it the Statue of Liberty?
I can't remember now.
Yeah, I don't recall.
She climbed a really large monument basically, and the person was black. Despite the fact that ICE is, predominantly going after those of Mexican descent or, other...
Latin individuals.
Yeah, Latin individuals or whatever you want to call it, right? And, et cetera, right? People understand that it's not just like, oh, yeah, you're propping up Black lives solely so they can be the superior race or some shit. It's not at all what Black Lives Matter says. It's not even close. It's just that this is affecting us right now, and it's important that this stops.
So I think one of the stronger examples I've seen of the Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter argument is if you were to go to, say I had a son and I invited you guys to my son's funeral. My son died for whatever reason, and I invite James up to speak. And James comes up and he goes, you know what? It's really tragic that Brandon's son died, but I just want to point out that tons of kids die every day, and all those kids' lives matter too.
Ugh.
That's fucked up. Like, think about that. Think about how fucked up that would be to say.
Right.
That's what you're saying when you say all lives matter instead of Black Lives Matter.
Right.
Because all lives are not under attack. All lives are not dying. But Black lives are under attack, and Black lives are dying. That's why that shit matters, and you need to say that and realize that.
Yeah.
So there was also a pastor who tried to explain this as succinctly as he could, using Bible verses, of course. Saying, hey, it's obviously, we all know that like all lives are very important, but that's not what Black Lives Matter is trying to get rid of, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he brings up one of the specific verses of the Bible where Jesus said, "Blessed be the poor."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if that's verbatim. I'm sorry.
Right.
Verse, but and he said basically, okay, so if somebody just chimed in like, just straight up told Jesus like, oh, but blessed be are the rich too, like you can't just
they're people
it's like,
too.
no,
Yeah.
it's like that actually takes away from the whole point of what Jesus is trying to say, right? Like it's like the poor are getting fucked on.
Yeah.
Like I don't even. So what? You're gonna just say like the rich need the same help that they do? That's not how it works.
Right. I mean,
like it's
again, like, I mean, there's so many ways to put it, right? Like, okay, like let's take a look at my roof, for example, right? I had leaks in my roof for the longest time, right? One of them was like rarely leaked. One of them was like maybe a tiny drip, and another one was like fucking spewing water out. And like, I'm going to go and try to address the one that's spewing water out first, right? You go to the one that's the most damaged. You go to the one where the problems are the most. I mean, in the end,
one that's in the need.
All leaks matter. Yeah, sure. But like, this is the one that's fucking flooding in my carpet and destroying electricity and shit like that. I'm going to go and address this one, and that's such a stupid, superficial way to put it. But again, it's just, that's the commonality of it. You address where the problem is. That's why you say Black Lives Matter, because that's where the problem is. So
it's unfortunate that like it even needs to be broken down in such a way.
Yeah, it is unfortunate.
But what's going on is when somebody says all lives matter, they actually just don't give a fuck. It's not that they think that at this point, from all the people I've talked to, from all this bullshit that has been gone through, even before any of these protests, right? Even before George Floyd, these people like are just don't actually care, right? It's not that they legitimately think that it's about all lives mattering or whatever. They say that simply to undermine the movement. Mm-hmm. They say that simply to undermine the fact that people are under duress. Mm-hmm. To put it as easily as possible.
I mean, the biggest irony really is just the Buffalo police talking about, why are you picking on us? We're not all bad. We're not thugs. Blah blah
pieces
blah.
Of shit.
It's like you sit there and you watch that and you're just like, really? Are you that? Do you lack that much self-awareness? Like, are you?
They're like, you're really gonna sit down and play the victim,
right?
When someone else is very clearly having a far worse problem. Like, that's just a start. Like what I'm saying, that's just a start.
It's crazy. It's crazy how like they're like, cops get mad. Oh, it's not all cops. It's like, come on, dude. Like, it's just like the lack of self-awareness is just astounding to me.
A few bad apples spoil the bunch.
Yeah.
If it's not all cops, then the good cops would have gotten rid of the bad ones.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And
I mean, part of the problem with that goes back to the systematic racism and the old boys club of, if there is a good cop, they get fucking fired.
Yep.
They get thrown out for reporting other cops.
There was that story.
No good cop.
Yeah,
exactly.
I was reading that story about
whatever.
Yeah, there was that one young cop who was ordered to shoot somebody and he didn't do it, and so a bunch of other guys came and shot him, and then the guy got like fired, demoted, or whatever, and he was no longer a cop. That was it. I mean, oh man, like this is why I keep thinking like. How like when we well, I don't know about Isaiah, but like when I was a kid, they make us read like fucking Great Expectations and Red Badge of Courage, all this shit like that. Like today, all kids need to be forced to watch some Zootopia and then do like some massive analysis of that movie, dude. Because
that reminds me, there were police officers that were forced to watch Zootopia and did not understand the underlying themes of racism.
Are you serious?
Yeah. It was documented and studied, like that they were like, yeah, we're gonna make them watch Zootopia and see what they say about this, and most of the cops did not recognize the racism aspect at all.
Of course they didn't.
Look,
is all I can really say. Of course they didn't.
I don't want to.
It's funny bunny Disney movie, right, or whatever the fuck.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, if you haven't seen Zootopia, if you're watching this and you haven't seen Zootopia, I don't want to say too much more because it's like fucking mind blowing and shit like that. But you need to see this movie. It's like one of the fucking greatest movies ever.